You all really like Jurassic World, don't you?
Yeah, they definitely do.
Well, excuse the fuck out of me. I'm sorry, Chris Pratt. It'll never happen again. Okay, so now we're going. We were with Universal. Now we're coming over to Disney, and this was the big thing about Pixar finally being back, being resurrected after 3 misses right in a row with Cars 2, Brave, and Monsters University. Monsters University is always the one I forget.
Oh, it's so bad.
I know it's kind of half unpopular to say Brave, but Brave.
I liked Brave. I didn't love it.
But it did not. It felt like a Disney movie, but it really should not have been a Pixar movie.
Agreed.
It was way too basic for that. But whatever. It and Wreck-It Ralph really should have switched places there. Because Wreck-It Ralph is such a Pixar movie while not being a Pixar movie. And now we have Inside Out, which I remember hearing about like 5 years ago. And I thought just the basic outline of it taking place inside a human being's head was a really interesting concept. And I kind of felt way back then that this might be, where they can... They weren't in quite a slump back then when I heard about this, but it seemed like something they could have done that would be quite special. And it appears to be that most people are taking to it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm hearing some things about it being Pixar's best movie, or what people are saying, or at least quite up there. I don't think it's totally unfounded. It's, I'm not saying that it's one of Pixar's very best, but I wouldn't argue with somebody if they thought that.
Yeah, you understand their argument.
Because my first thought, after once they really elaborated on what the concept was, I don't know about the rest of you, but the movie that kept popping into my head was Osmosis Jones. I don't know if anybody even remembers that movie exists anymore, but yeah, it was from like 2002, and with the white blood cell, and David Hyde Pierce was the pill, and they were fighting off Lawrence Fishburne.
I was thinking Herman's Head for kids.
Yeah, I don't know what that was, but I saw somebody reference it. That's like an old TV show, apparently.
Fox TV show, Yardley Smith and Hank Azaria, they were living inside William Ragsdale's head.
Mm. Yeah, it does sound closer to that.
Very much so, especially when I watched the movie.
But as you can imagine, there was a time there with Cars 2 and Monsters University where you were probably living in extreme fear that Pixar had run out of complete creativity. But I wonder how long exactly this project was in development. Because it almost, when you watch it, it almost kind of feels like the reason they half-assed it by giving us Cars 2 and Monsters University was because all of their really great ideas were going into this.
I buy that.
Because I guess they've got some dinosaur movie coming out as well.
It's had a lot of issues, honestly, The Good Dinosaur has.
Yeah, I saw like they changed the whole cast list and everything.
They did.
They look, the cast list, when you look at the cast list they had and the cast list they have now it looks more like a mockbuster type cast. But anyway, with Inside Out, yeah, it's, okay, the thing about it, though, is despite all the creative... I'll get this out of the way real quick. It's just a small criticism. Calm down. Despite the fact that we have all this creativity going on, there is a foundation story that everything has to branch off of, which is the story set in the real world, that basically... kind of, I guess maybe this is kind of the point, because it's just the general thing that children and preteens have to deal with, which is, we start off with the plot in the real world where it's, everything's great and happy, and this is a wonderful, happy family, but then because of Dad's business, they have to move. And once they get there, they hate it. And Dad's being neglectful because he's always taking phone calls and shit like that. And they kind of have to, you know... And it's the whole thing about the preteen girl kind of going through her depressed rebellion stage. But even though that's kind of a cliche in itself, it's just the foundation that we need to build this really elaborate story going on in the foreground. Which is following there were 4 or 5 of them? 5. Joy, sadness, fear, anger, and disgust. Yeah, it's 5. And yeah, we're introduced to this as it's really nice to see Pixar. The ideas that really went into this really went into this because they had to build an entire imaginative world. Because like with the Monsters University world, you kind of already had the world built from the other one, and Cars the same thing, and it's really just, you know, a world of monsters or a world of cars. Here, they pretty much have to start from scratch and do their own thing entirely of what this world was going to be like.
Yeah.
And there is a lot to it. Like, I can't even imagine how much had to have gone into this in the pre-stages before they even started writing the script, even. And it's what's great about it is with that great massive concept that they have.
Yeah.
They actually do come up with a story that is able to, where it's not just a really big concept and then just a paper thin story that is thrown into it. They have a story that actually lives up to the concept.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, everything that they thought up has to have something to do within this story to make everything
makes sense
and come together. Yeah. And there's pretty much around every corner there is some creative idea. They never really kind of let up on that. Some of the great stuff is like how Dreams are like this film production company. Where this rainbow unicorn was the star back in the day. We have the character, the imaginary friend. His name was
Bing Bong.
Yes, who is Richard Kind.
Kind.
And he is a pink elephant, but his body is made out of cotton candy.
He's part dolphin.
Yeah, that.
And cat, because he has the cat tail.
Yes, I knew there was one thing missing. And they do that's Bing Bong's storyline gets really deep.
Yeah, it does.
Because, as you know, after a while, imaginary friends start to fade from your memory, etc., stuff like that. But there's also stuff in there like I love the vacuum guys.
Oh yeah.
Where they make there's a lot of clever jokes in there. Like there's kind of there's one particular joke where they're the guys that have to come in and kind of take out the memories that are just taking up room. And there's a whole row devoted to phone numbers. And they just say, oh, those are all in our phone now. We can just get rid of all of those.
So what happens if the phone breaks?
The idea of the jingle that gets stuck in your head. It's because they're intentionally just keep throwing it up into the mind every now and then. Just when they feel like it.
Oh god, the gum commercial, yes.
There's a clever joke in there when they're, I think it's Bing Bong is sorting through stuff. And it's boxes that are facts and opinions. And his response is, but they all look the same.
They look like mahjong tiles, basically.
But yeah, and there's another particularly great one where we have all this really great animation going on, but there's also callbacks to like old school animation.
Yep.
Like the particular time where they go through the shortcut and they become 2-dimensional and they start deconstructing. That's a very interesting and creative scene. One thing that kind of felt like, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say that I even remember that this happened, but one thing, the train of thought, being a literal train, is something right out of Shark Boy and Lava Girl, that Robert Rodriguez movie that his kid wrote.
I do like the fact that once Riley goes to sleep, the train of thought stops. Mm-hmm. I thought that was done well, too.
Yeah. So, yes, and the voice cast.
Oh, it's amazing.
The voice cast is perfect. Like, everybody really, really suits their part. But Amy Poehler, in particular, kind of feels like she was born for this part.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a voice performance, but this feels like a part that, I mean, there were kind of a lot of people that probably could have done Joy well, but after seeing the movie, I cannot really imagine another voice with that character, with it coming off as the character should, being like the epitome of joy and happiness.
She's Sarah Silverman this year. I could say that right now.
Oh, you mean like when she did Vanellope?
Yeah.
And Philip Smith from The Office is really good too. Sadness has a really key part in this.
Yeah, it's very, very important.
That's what's good about it too, is when you kind of start at the beginning there, it seems like it's everything is at its absolute best when joy is at the wheel of the mind, and everything's happy and jovial. And it would be really bad if sadness or anger or fear or disgust had to take over. But it eventually gets to a point where you realize that all of them are important in their own way.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really... This movie's got a whole lot of... like.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot of in-depth things in there. That's really... Yeah, it almost makes me want to forgive them for the last 3 movies, because it's like... You'd almost think that they had to throw out 3 throwaway movies just because they had to...
Take the time to
all
make
the
something
creativity
like
was saved up for this.
And it shines through, like, meticulously, the way that everything looks and everything sounds and everything is done.
However, I do have to say a couple of things. I have to bring it down just a little bit, just a tiny, tiny bit. Nothing horribly wrong here or anything. Just a couple of things. Well, and it's not even really... it's not even really big criticism or anything. It's just kind of what comes with the territory. Mm-hmm. It's really, really funny.
Yeah.
But it's never quite like hilarious the way some of their other movies have been. Like even like take Up for instance. Up is considered like one of the saddest movies of the new century.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But Up has some really hilarious laugh-out-loud scenes in it. I never really felt like something, while managing to keep the points they were trying to make with this, and making it really funny. It was never flat-out hilarious to me at any time. Like they've shown that they can do before, balancing them.
Yeah.
And it never... There are moments in this that are really, really... Like, Bill Hader was promoting it, and I know it's his job to promote the movie, but he was talking about how it probably had more big emotional payoffs than Up, even. And Up's got a lot of them.
Yeah, it really does.
I was able to acknowledge the emotional scenes in this, and they really work. Like, there's definitely potency to them, and what I'm about to say doesn't necessarily reflect that. But I never actually felt like getting emotional while watching it. Like I was able to acknowledge scenes where I was like, that's really sad, or that's really, really emotionally deep. But I never
physically went out for it yourself.
Yeah, the way... I know this sounds stupid, especially since I'm not even a gaming person by any means, but Wreck-It Ralph hit me like 3 times.
Oh, God. Tell me about it.
Where I felt like, oh, God, my eyes are going to stop raining if I don't stop. I never got to that point, surprisingly.
Towards the end for me, and like it happened a lot.
Like I said, I was totally able. Like I wasn't saying like I know this is supposed to be emotional, but it's not making me that way. There's still a total. No, it's totally there. It just didn't hit me as hard as similar movies have in the past.
Understandable.
Which is a little weird though, because being a movie about emotions, you would think this would be the most hard hitting of all of them. and it's not, that kind of seems not like it should. But
well, Up's a pretty grand scale.
Yeah. Like I said, I think Wreck-It Ralph might even get to me more than Up does. I don't know.
That beginning of Up is enough to basically, like, erase all of movie history.
I don't know what it was about Wreck-It Ralph that did that to me, but... I actually, as far as Up is concerned, I actually find him seeing the back of the scrapbook harder to take than the opening montage, even. The opening montage is what gets all the credit, but there's a lot of stuff towards the end of Up that's really hard-hitting, too.
The last scene in Toy Story 3 always gets me.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in Toy Story 3, too.
Oh, there really is.
Yeah, even in the very beginning, when he chooses Woody over Buzz, like, when you see that look on Buzz's face, you're like, no. But yeah, I never got really emotionally invested in this, but, you know, that's not to take away at all with the kind of effect the scenes have. So, yeah, I also liked the, it only happens in one scene, but I did like when we went into, the mom and dad's heads as well.
That was great.
And then there's a whole ending credit thing where we elaborate on that even further. So yeah, there's really a lot to admire in this movie. It might be one of those movies that I admire more than I enjoy, but that's not, you know, that's still not a bad thing at all. I still really, really like it.
Would you watch it again?
Oh, probably at some point, sure, yeah. But yeah, it's definitely, I think most audiences will generally feel, and I think that's why it's getting the huge reception that it is. There'll be people who not only admire it, but absolutely love watching it and get really emotional at those really big moments. And I think that's why it's really, and that's why I can totally understand people having a huge reaction to it, saying it's, you know, one of the best things Pixar's ever done. It's not my personal opinion, but it's one I would certainly never argue with. So, yeah. I
gotta mention mine real quick because I know you're headed to you're headed to the next review. I kind of love this movie. I really do.
Oh, I thought that's a surprise.
And it's Disney versus Universal like this summer. It's exactly what it's going to be all summer long, and it's going to be glorious.
This particular time, I'm totally taking Disney.
Well, if you look at my scale for everything, I'm going to agree with you on this. But here's the thing: I love the Haunted Mansion song. The song from the Stretching Room used.
Yeah, that's another thing I did
that was
like,
great.
Where they actually took the time to go through the dark portions of it. Like, we see nightmares through her eyes, and we see her deepest, darkest thoughts and stuff like that.
Creepy clown.
I thought that was a really... I wasn't quite sure if they would... I mean, I know Pixar's gone to some really, really dark places.
Extremely dark places,
But at the place they were right at this point, I wasn't quite sure they'd go there, and I'm really glad they did, because you want to... That's the kind of thing you really want to explore. That's like when Inception came out, and it was like, yeah, we're going into Cillian Murphy's head, and we're going to deal with dreams, and the first thing I thought of was, I wonder what they do with Nightmare. I would have loved to have seen Inception go into Nightmare.
Oh my god.
But yeah, you know, I guess that's what Mary Cotillard's for.
I guess so. I love it when everybody else's head's in there, too. That was always entertaining.
Yeah, I love the way they kind of delved into all those different aspects of it. I don't think there's anything they missed.
No.
Fantasies are in there, daydreams are in there. Everything is touched on in one way or another.
I love the cats.
The memory of the helicopter pilot and the mom's head.
Let's and it's funny because she kicks it to the back at the very end, and it's like, and then the other one picks it up. It's like, oh, maybe for another rainy day.
Okay. Now we're on to our second and last movie of the day, which is totally different.
Yep.
Which is Dope. I would not be surprised at all if you have no idea what Dope is, because I had no idea what Dope is when I went into it. I knew it was at Sundance this year.
Yes.
I think.
That sounds right.
That's all I knew. And
we'll go into that.
A lot of people, there are more famous people behind this movie than there are in it. We had Forrest Whitaker's behind it, Sean Combs is behind it, Pharrell's behind it. Did I miss anybody? And I really wasn't sure what it is, but it's basically a coming-of-age comedy that also has it's got a bit of half-baked in it.
Yep.
And, there's a little smidge of Breaking Bad in there. Yep. It's got all kinds of things, but it's predominantly a comedy, surprisingly, and coming of it, probably coming of age more than anything. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about it was, at first I wasn't sure what genre it was. I assumed it was a drama, like a kind of like the first 30 minutes of Boys in the Hood stretched to feature length. That's kind of what I was expecting.
Okay.
But really early on in the movie, they let you know that they're actually. It seems like it's going to go. There's a point that happens in this movie where it's not quite. There are funny things there, but it's not quite a comedy yet. Mm-hmm. But then once it gets to that point, it could go in a really serious direction.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it could go really dark and serious really fast. But from that point on, they make it this fun comedy. Which sounds, on paper, like it doesn't work at all. But for the most part, it does.
Yeah, very much so.
Weirdly. It's certainly a bizarre experience if you're going in totally blind. I wasn't quite sure for a long time what the setting was, the time frame, because it's set in present day. Yep. But everybody in this movie acts like they're in the 90s. Because that's just the tip thing to do in this area, I guess. We have the kid that gets he gets a birthday present from his dad, and it's a VHS of Superfly. He rides to school on his bike with his Walkman, an actual Walkman with a cassette in it. But then they made references to like Bieber and Donald Glover, and I was like, oh, okay, so it's present day. He's just kind of stuck in the 90s. It's not quite.
It's not quite Kid and Play, but it's getting there.
It's somewhere in between Kid and Play and The Fresh Prince. Yeah. It's kind of in the middle. And it's, there's also a humorous narration from Forrest Whitaker throughout it. He's the only one in the producer cast list that's actually in it in one way or another, if you don't count Pharrell's music. I'm sure there was probably a Sean Kemp song in there somewhere too, I'm not sure. There's one thing, though, that this movie wants to preach about, and I'm not sure why. I kind of thought this was already a dated thing, or maybe now it's a dated thing, but it wasn't when the movie was in production, which is kind of embarrassing if that's the case. Yeah. This movie, well, before we go into what's in the actual movie, I was reading the other day that apparently Dope is the first movie in history that will accept Bitcoin for ticket sales. And this movie basically becomes an advertisement for Bitcoin.
It really does.
I guess. Because he starts off talking about it in the very first scene of the movie, and then they bring it back towards the end as a major plot point. So, whatever you want to take that as. And I do like that they didn't. It was very clear that they were not going to take the cliche route with this movie. This was the dude that made this movie is the guy that made a lot of movies. He made The Wood and a lot of movies similar to The Wood. He wrote Talk to Me. Brown Sugar was the one I was trying to think of. And he did Our Family Wedding, which is a comedy that starred Forrest Whitaker 5 years ago that I saw and totally forgot about before I was doing my research on this movie. They could have gone the cliche here, but they decided to do it in a really interesting way, which is there's a very funny scene towards the beginning where he's done. It kind of felt like the opening scene of American History X. Yeah. In Sweeney's office, he goes in and he's done his big essay on Ice Cube's song "Today Was a Good Day," and he's trying to basically discover what it was that made Ice Cube's day so good, or something like that. Yeah. And the teacher asks him why he wrote about something like that, and he tells us right up front that he has the really, really cliche backstory of being raised by a single mom and the dad abandoned him and they don't have much money and they live in a shitty neighborhood. But he does not care to talk about that or go into it. And what's great about that is the movie follows the character stride and doesn't really care about that either. Which was really, really refreshing, especially since they said that right up front. Because that's kind of what I was worried about when we went into this. But there's some obvious influences in there. There's actually a moment towards the end where he has to, our lead character Malcolm has to kind of confront some guys that terrorized him at the beginning. And during this confrontation, there's a music cue that sounds an awful lot like the music from Boys in the Hood.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very similar scene, too. As we both pointed out, there's it actually gets to a point in this movie where, as you can see, the serious elements and the comedy elements are so split up that there are a few scenes that feel like Boys in the Hood, and there are a few scenes that feel like Friday.
A lot of Friday in there.
And yeah, they managed to keep up with a relatively fun tone. Like I said, it's kind of a lot of the tone. For a while there, the tone kind of feels like season 1 of Breaking Bad, which went back and forth a lot, but while maintaining, a cohesion of sorts. But having said that, also most of the performances are really good. The only performance that I didn't think was kind of, up to par with everybody, Zoe Kravitz kind of felt off on some scenes. It's kind of like, especially the scene in the car, I was like, yeah, is that really the delivery you're going with? But, apart from that, the lead is really good, the guy that plays Malcolm.
He's come a long way.
Has he been in other stuff that we've seen?
Yep. He was in Joyful Noise.
Oh, God. Well, it looks like he was just like an extra or something.
No. Our Lady of Perpetual Tears choir master. She was on House of Pain, and there's a TV series starting next year called The Get Down.
His screen time gets cut off relatively early, but the guy that played Dom is really good too. Of course, Keith Stanfield is in there, who you mostly know from Short Term 12, or the one scene in The Purge 2 when he took his mask off. The girl, Diggy is her name, where we actually learn in her introduction that she's a girl, but you can't really tell at first. Because he tells us in the narration, yeah, you can't tell, but she is a girl. Yeah, I was mistaken when I first saw her as well. I did not know that until he told us that she was.
Kira from Austin and Ally, if you guys are Disney fans out there. That's interesting.
And she's very good too. And of course, Zero.
Yes, Tony Revolori
is in this movie as well. As a wannabe whatever type. And that's the thing. That's what I love about this too. Is even the types like Dom, who are the drug dealers. Nobody in this movie is really treated that much like a thug.
No, not really.
Except the bullies at the school.
Yeah.
Like even the drug dealers are like really smart characters and like, speak really well and do that stuff. And they're not portrayed in this,
Yeah.
I'm not saying, you should portray drug dealers as that.
In a movie like this,
it's refreshing. It's refreshing to see them portrayed that way in a movie where they play such important roles in the story.
I love the bullies just stealing shoes, and it's like, why don't you guys have bigger feet so I can get shoes from you?
It did kind of throw me off that the main plot of this movie is set off by a major convenience.
Mm-hmm.
This movie's story could have been stopped dead in its tracks 20 minutes in. But the scene where he has the drugs in his backpack and he walks through the detector at school, and the security guard is aware of him, and the dog is barking at him and everything, but the security guard is under the impression that he knows him and is under the impression that this would never happen. So the detector goes off and the dog goes crazy, but he just lets him go anyway because he knows him.
It's broken.
You think he would? Yeah, the machine is broken. You think he would have at least said, "Sorry about this, but let me check you just because it's protocol." And the movie would have been over.
Yeah, it would have been over in like 15 minutes.
So that was kind of, when your whole plot is based on that convenience from then on, like it starts from there, that's kind of a glaring thing that's kind of hard to ignore. The pace isn't exactly ideal. It's only an hour and 45 minutes, but it feels pretty long after a while. Like I said, it is fun for a while, and there are times where it pops back up in the second half, but after the first half is over, it kind of loses its way a little bit, and it doesn't feel as fresh, and it gets a little sloppier, which is disappointing because it's still not a bad movie or anything. It doesn't get bad; it just gets not as good as it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that is such something that's so attention grabbing is because for the first 30 minutes or so of this movie, I thought we were in for something like really great. I thought we were gonna have like a best of the year kind of thing going on.
I can see that.
But by the end of it, it's all right. It's not bad. So it was kind of a. But at the same time, I struggle to say it's a letdown since I had no idea what this movie was when we went into it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's fine. Sure, it's worth checking out
if you can find it. Because I have a feeling this is not going to have a long shelf life in theaters.
So yeah, it's an interesting surprise, and it's nice to have seen it because it's, yeah, it's fun.
It was good. I liked it. I did like it a lot actually. I love the '90s music. I thought that fit really well.
Okay, we pre-recorded this week's verses, so we're already done.
Yeah, Vigilante coming at you on Sunday, longest verses ever, and I will timestamp when the movie starts. Where you want to hear about. How many movies? You have to wait to find out.
Yeah, I really think it would have been better split up as 2 videos, but we didn't have time. We didn't think to plan that ahead, so...
We had the time, we just didn't think about it.
Yeah. And if you tried to do that, you would probably lose the second half and then...
Yes. Then you'd have to come back like you did before and actually film again.
Both myself and my brother would probably beat you to death.
Yeah, probably.
Because that's all...
would have happened, most likely. Because all my friends are in California, they can't really help me right now.
Okay, we're done here.
That's what we've got for this week. AJ, real quick, Inside Out.
3.
And Dope.
2.5.
All right. So ends another edition of AJ's Movie Reviews. Gaming with Ash returns tomorrow, and brand new verses on Sunday. We got a lot of new verses ideas. Thanks to your brother. So they'll be coming up very soon. And we're going to continue our epic verses next week with a little bit of Spielberg. And that's going to end June and roll us into July. Yeah. A big bit of Spielberg in this case.
Well, I'll give you a hint. E.T.'s already out of the way.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There's only a couple we have left that are...
And if you haven't seen it, E.T. and Super 8, that video's on this channel as well, on the playlist. So wrestling content, Horror Nights content coming up very soon. I'm going to be guesting with the Horror Nights Updaters on their podcast tomorrow, so check that out. I'll tweet links to that. And that's what we've got for this week. And AJ, any parting words?